Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Sara Cornish, and I am at the Games for Change organization here in New York City. We're so pleased to welcome you to our third Games for Change Industry Circle Google Hangout. And today we're going to be speaking with BrainPOP. So today we'll hear from Allisyn Levy, and she's the VP of GameUp at BrainPOP, and Barb Chamberlin from the Learning Games Lab at New Mexico State University. They'll be discussing GameUp, which is a curated collection of learning games, over 120 learning games that BrainPOP has put together, and GameUp's impact on their research. So just to give you a little kind of guide to how the Hangout works, we are going to be using a Q&A app for an audience Q&A after we hear from the BrainPOP team. So you can access that Q&A so you as our viewers can participate by going to the far left of your screen and clicking on the Q&A button. And that will open up a panel on the right of your screen where you can enter in questions. So we'll remind you again of how this works when we move to that Q&A session in about half an hour. But please do participate, and you can enter your questions via this Hangout or on Twitter. And we'll be on Twitter using hashtag G4C Industry. And we encourage you to follow along there as well. So we've also included a few links in the Showcase app. And so that's another one that we encourage you to use during this Hangout, to access the Showcase app and open up that list of resources and links. And we even have a poll in there that we'll be using to ask you a few questions as our viewers. To open the Showcase app, you also go to that same column of icons on the left of your screen, and you can click on it's a yellow tag icon, and that will give you access to several important links that we'll be referring to in the Hangout today. So again, the Q&A app is how you can enter in questions for the BrainPOP team today. And then the Showcase app is how you can access the poll that we'll be referring to, as well as a couple of other important resources that we'll encourage you to explore. And we see that we already have 14 submissions to our poll, so thank you, and keep participating. So to give you an introduction to the Games for Change Industry Circle, the Industry Circle aims to acknowledge the achievements and challenges in the growing and emerging social impact games sector. So we at Games for Change are recognizing some of the companies, the entrepreneurs, the individuals that are emerging as industry leaders. And we believe that identifying and sharing the best practices and lessons learned with this emerging community can inspire and hopefully bring more in to forge new paths in this sector. So the Industry Circle includes Cognito, Filament Games, both of whom we've already heard from in the Google Hangout series, as well as Amplify, BrainPOP, who's here today, the Global Gaming Initiative, Glass Lab, and Shell Games. So by way of introduction, as one of the founding members of the Games for Change Industry Circle, BrainPOP is an online learning portal that's used to engage students both in school and at home. BrainPOP was founded in 1999 by an immunologist and pediatrician as a creative way to explain tough concepts to his young patients. Now BrainPOP is used in over 20% of US schools, and it's growing internationally. So we'll hear more from Allisyn Levy today about BrainPOP. Allisyn is, as I said before, the VP of GameUp at BrainPOP. Since 2007, she's played an integral role in the creation, launch, and continued development of GameUp of BrainPOP Educators, which is an online professional community of almost 500,000 members. Allisyn has spent 11 years as an elementary education teacher as well, and so she often does professional development for teachers on game-based learning. She organizes digital playgrounds to give educators a hands-on experience with digital games, and so she's really working with that education community. So Allisyn and the BrainPOP team have been working with some of the top educational game creators out there to create GameUp. And so that's what we're going to hear about today. And one of these partners is the Learning Games Lab at New Mexico State University. So here today we'll also be hearing from Barbara Chamberlin, who oversees development and research at the Learning Games Lab at New Mexico State. The lab develops learning tools and assessment and has been a key partner for GameUp throughout the development of the portal. So we're going to start this this conversation. So again, if you're tuned in, you can follow along on Twitter at G4C Industry using that hashtag. At the bottom of our screen, you can see a couple of the Twitter handles of our participants today from BrainPOP and the Learning Games Lab at New Mexico State. And we encourage you to submit questions via our Q&A, which again you can access by clicking the Q&A icon on the left of your screen. So without further ado, Allisyn, I'm going to put you up as our presenter and ask that you can please talk about kind of the origin of GameUp and how it's evolved over time. So
Excellent.
Welcome, Allisyn.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Sara. I'm going to quickly share my screen to just see who we have in the audience. So hopefully people have had a chance to use that, the first link to vote and help us get to know who you are. So are you guys able to see the screen? I think so. Cool. So it looks like we have, okay, a good chunk of universities that are developing learning games. A lot of other, and I don't know, Barb and I were trying to figure out what categories do we make here. I think we forgot a lot, and I don't think we have a great way to find out who people are, but hopefully we can keep the conversation going to learn more after this Google Hangout. So now I will switch over and share a different screen with you and tell you a bit about GameUp. Okay. There we go. Okay. So now you should be seeing GameUp. Looks like you are. Okay. So GameUp has been around for the last 4 years and is a part of BrainPOP, which is a subscription-based website that Sara mentioned has been around since 1999. And BrainPOP is very well known for its animated movies that tie into content across the curriculum. GameUp is a collection of over 100 learning games that tie into content across the curriculum as well, and all of the BrainPOP movies. But to access the games on GameUp, you do not need to be a subscriber. So these games are all available to anybody in school, out of school. And if I can give you a quick tour of GameUp, we've got over 40 partners, and that includes partners from universities, from museums. Some of these games are developed by teachers, independent game developers. So this is just a quick peek at some of our partners. And if I were a teacher, which I used to be, and I were looking for a math game, I can either quickly explore from GameUp's homepage. I could explore by subject area. And so I'll go into a game called Game Over Gopher, which is one of New Mexico State University's Learning Games Lab's games. And I will mute the sound of the game, which is a great feature that partners offer, which we've learned from going into classrooms and gathering feedback from teachers. And if I go into the practice mode of this game, and I'll talk a little bit more about the assessment features that we offer, I can explore. I'm going to get a question wrong. And then as a teacher, I might ask my students to use a tool that we have called the snapshot tool, the snapthought tool, which takes a quick image of the game at a particular moment. When you click it, it generates a thumbnail in the lower left-hand corner. And at any time, so it doesn't have to disrupt the flow of the game, I can access that. So maybe I'll get a question right. I'll take another snapshot. And at And when I'm ready to, or if my teacher prompts me to, I can click on those thumbnails and write a very brief written response. So maybe my teacher is asking me, pick a moment where you got stuck in the game, or when you figured out something, or you used a strategy to get up to the next level. And I can write a brief written reflection, save it, and submit it to my teacher. So that's one assessment tool that we offer as part of GameUp. Another thing about GameUp that I'll speak a little bit more about, but while I'm in here I can show you briefly, is the support around these games. So not only are we partnering with game developers who are creating incredible games, but we're also bundling all of these games with support material. So if I go into the lesson ideas button, you can see we've got standards alignment specific to the game, which is here. More information about the game for teachers, videos of the game, lesson plans, game guides, assessment tips, discussion questions, quick little nuggets of inspiration for educators that they can use to learn more about the game and how to maximize it in their classrooms. We also have our games, the games tie into BrainPOP content. So if I am a classroom teacher and I am introducing coordinate planes to my students for the first time, I might use a game like Game Over Gopher to pique their interest and say, hey guys, I found this great game, can you help me figure it out? And before my kids have any background, maybe we use the game to kind of explore that topic, and then once the kids have gotten a taste of the game, then we might want to use one of the BrainPOP topics to build more background knowledge. Or if the students are playing the game and struggling a bit, I could say, why don't you pause the game for a second and see if there's some more information in this movie on coordinate planes that you can use to help you get unstuck from that moment of the game. So that's a very, very brief overview of what we offer on GameUp.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And so one of the biggest challenges that we know, we've talked a little bit about with the music for that game is so great.
There we go.
So one of the key challenges that we talked a little bit about with Filament on our last Hangout is the challenge of getting games into classrooms and convincing teachers that these are tools that are going to be useful to them, that are functional, that will prove their benefits with student learning and assessment, and help them with results-driven teaching. And so what we would love to hear from you, and this would be a question for you, Barb, are if you could talk a little bit about those challenges that nonprofits and universities and organizations like yours at New Mexico State face when trying to get games into classrooms, work with teachers to convince them of the the benefits and the opportunities of using games for learning.
Yeah. Okay. Happy to.
So I'm going to make you. There we go.
All right.
All right. Hi, Barb.
You've nailed it. We work a lot with teachers, and you've nailed exactly two of the issues. One is helping teachers find things. Of course, as a developer, I want them to find my stuff. But I recognize that teachers don't just want to find my stuff. They want to find all the stuff for all the things they're doing. So it makes a lot more sense for them to go someplace that has collections from multiple developers than to just come to massnax.org. Though Massnax has our things, we love partnering where they can find those other things. And then the second component is how do they use it, which is critical. That's a complex, multi-level issue as well. So the Learning Games Lab at NMSU, we're a development house, a nonprofit development house at a university. And while we certainly do a lot of development for adults, kids, parents, professionals, a wide range of things, we certainly do a lot in the K-12 space as well. And one of our most recent is Math Snacks, which is a series of games. The Game Over Gopher was from that. So our biggest challenges, and from what I understand from my colleagues at other institutions, they have the same problems. How do we help teachers find? How do we help students find it? And then how do we support that use? So let's talk about finding. This is an apples to oranges comparison, but if we just take a look at a lot of our stuff that's out there, and this certainly isn't all of our videos and all of our apps and things that we do, but you can just see the green pie is just BrainPOP. So not only does BrainPOP deliver specifically some of our games, they have become a huge partner in everything that we do for dissemination. Let's just look at Math Snacks resources, and this is our games, animations, 7 apps, our teacher resources, even our own website, which is the burgundy piece of the pie, and has many of our other partners pointing to that. BrainPOP still delivers the eyeballs to us in a hugely significant way. So we were, frankly, shocked and thrilled at how BrainPOP has helped us with our dissemination on that. A specific example of that is with our game Ninja Kitchen, which is a game that teaches food safety information to kids in middle school when they're learning to cook, which is actually critically important for health, but teachers are not actively seeking this content out. It doesn't appear on a standardized exam anywhere. And on BrainPOP, we can look just at some of our analytics, and you can tell that we are hitting the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday players. You can see that our weekend use is much, much lower. So it not only helps us get eyeballs, but it helps us get some of our more specific content and different content. Math, we know that's going to go into math classrooms. Food safety for kids who are learning to cook, but we are getting that into the classroom as well, which is really exciting. So this is helping us change our strategy on all of our future grant work. We are going to continue developing games, which are research-based, measuring effectiveness, doing all the formative testing that we do to develop it. And now we realize our strategy is working with partners for dissemination and distribution. That's the way to do it. And we're looking to that more and more and helping us with research formatively, such as the Snapthought tool that Allisyn showed. And then also some of our summative, I think in the future we'll be able to go to that as well.
All right, great. Thank you, Barb. And so this is probably a question for both you and Allisyn, but we're wondering how both of your organizations really kind of disseminate your products and even, you know, if you want to call it marketing, but how you actually get GameUp, get BrainPOP, you know, BrainPOP's other tools, you know, in front of teachers and in front of the educators who are, you know, going to be using them in their classrooms.
You want me to jump in first on that?
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it, Allisyn.
Okay. So I think one big reason for that is that BrainPOP has been around for a long time and is very trusted by teachers and administrators and families. So if we're saying, hey, we think this is a great game and we have a very rigorous vetting process that we put games through, it seems like it's been very well received by our users. We also go to over, I think it's 70 or 80 educational conferences a year, so we're constantly in touch with teachers, promoting this. We put a lot of effort on professional development. We do free weekly webinars. So we have like many avenues that we're reaching our audience with to help get these games out. And again, you know, it's not only like, hey, here are some great games that you should be using, but here are some support resources around every single one of these games, so you can kind of get a sense of here's what it looks like and sounds like to use this game in kindergarten versus 8th grade versus 4th grade. And here are some, you know, really meaningful assessment tools that teachers can use in a practical way, that they don't have to, you know, if the kids just spent 10 minutes playing a game, they can glean some meaningful information from that without having to dedicate like an hour trying to figure out, okay, what just happened and how can I apply that?
Great. So that sort of the assessment piece sort of ties into my next question, which is around what differentiates BrainPOP and specifically GameUp from other game aggregators. You know, there are lots of sites out there, portals that, you know, provide many games and advocate games for learning. But what sets BrainPOP and again GameUp, what sets you guys apart?
Sure. So again, to me, I think bundling the games with the support materials for educators is a big part of that. We're also developing close relationships with all of these partners. So for us, it's very common that we'll have a partner say, hey, we're about to make a new game. What kind of feedback are you getting from teachers? What are they looking for? Are they looking for, we're wanting to make a new math game. You know, where are the pain points of teachers? So we're able to tap into our community and pass along that feedback and kind of serve as a liaison between developers and the educator community. We are also able to share the lessons that we've learned from doing lots and lots of play testing with our own features, or working together with our partners, going into classrooms, doing focus groups with teachers, to say, like, make sure your game has a mute button, and little things like that that really will make a big difference for educators. Barb, anything? And all of the playtesting efforts. I think New Mexico State University's team does an amazing job with that. We've learned a lot from them. Same as Classroom Inc. I saw there was a conversation going on about that through Twitter today, and hopefully we can share a link out regarding that. There's my colleague Katya and a teacher named Steve Isaacs run an organization called EdTech Bridge, or an initiative, I guess, to get game developers and educators talking to each other. Not only game developers, but people in the ed tech space talking directly with teachers and saying, hey, we want to build a new tool. What should we be thinking about? Can we come test this out? How are your students responding? What should we be thinking about? And helping to make that a very real part of the conversation early on.
Can I weigh in a little bit too on one of the things that have made them a nice partner for us? And I mentioned that this is kind of our new strategy. Our model is really to look at partnerships for dissemination. And one of the things we like about GameUp and what we look for in all our partnerships is it's a non-exclusive relationship. So certainly we can share among many partners. But what we look for is we want a really active partner, somebody who is well-known, well-respected, who is curating their work, so that it helps us to know the types of games that we will be included with. And that's really important to us, that it's not just a list of links that sits and nobody's on. BrainPOP is incredibly active in curating it and sharing it. Certainly sharing those resources. We have some games that we have created extensive teacher materials for, like all of our Math Snacks games, and BrainPOP links and embeds all of those right in. And then we have some games we haven't created some great teacher support materials for, and BrainPOP has created those for us and linked to them, which is nice. And then finally, just ease in working with them, from integrating the API for SnapThought tools and all of that. It's been just really easy to work with them. There's always a cost for us to partner with someone and to give them our tools. It's never a matter of just giving them the link and being done. But we found they've been really efficient and easy to work with for us, so that's what makes it worth it to us. The huge downloads and then just the ease of working with them.
Great, thank you. So last question before we move into our audience Q&A, and this one would be for Allisyn. So Allisyn, tell us about the kinds of games that you look for GameUp, and for all the developers that are tuned in right now, how does a game developer get their game up on GameUp? What is that process like?
Good question. That's like one of the most frequently asked questions that I get. So right now we are hearing from teachers that mobile is of major interest to them. And it seems like the reality is that there's not necessarily phones or tablets in every classroom right this second. Chromebooks seem to be really big right now. But certainly in the next 5 or so years, we expect that we're going to see more and more access to tablets in the classrooms. So we are always looking for mobile games. We're looking to expand our offerings of mobile games. HTML5 seems like the best platform to go to. We're actually in the process of redesigning BrainPOP and GameUp to be mobile friendly using HTML5. So that's like a big sort of green star for us when we see that the games are available across platforms, across devices. I'm very happy to share the rubric that we use as a big part of our vetting process. That goes into a little bit more detail about what we look for when we find these games. If there are people that are developing great learning games that would like to have their game considered for GameUp, please get in touch with us. I'll share my contact information. And the process is basically we have a team that looks at the game. We look and see, does it tie into the content that we have on BrainPOP, as well as basics like, is this a fun, enjoyable game to play, obviously? Does it do a great job merging the game mechanic and the learning content? And the rubric can kind of go into more detail about the specifics of that. And generally, our partnerships are sort of seen as a, let us help you get your game out there and help you with discoverability, like Barb was talking about, and develop some support materials around the games and help get out whatever you've already got to offer in terms of support for educators, and we're able to help develop some of that as well. And for us, we see that as a win because we've got this existing content that you can take even further with these amazing games that our partners have developed.
All right, great. Thank you, Allisyn. And to all of you viewers out there, if you have any specific questions for Allisyn and the BrainPOP team, or to Barb and her team at the Learning Games Lab at New Mexico State, we do encourage you to enter those into the Q&A app on this Hangout. And so just to talk a little bit about how that works, because we're going to enter into our Q&A session now, you can click on the far left of your Google Hangout screen. There's a blue icon that says Q&A. If you click that, it opens up a panel, and that's where you can enter in your questions. And so we encourage you all to ask questions to Allisyn and Barb for the next few minutes. And you can also enter in questions via Twitter using hashtag G4C Industry. So we'll be monitoring the Twitter stream and answering your questions. And one final reminder to open up the showcase, which is another feature of this Google Hangout. So it's the yellow tag icon where that Q&A icon is located. And we have a poll where we're asking participants to let us know who you are and where you come from. And then we also have a guide to how to ask questions and use the Q&A app. So you can find a couple of links that were referred to in the conversation so far in the showcase as well. So so first question, and as we wait for the questions to come in, I will ask a few. But the first question is from Sterling Hardaway, and Sterling says, how is there a possibility, or have you ever partnered with a faith-based nonprofit or faith-based organization, and what is your policy around that?
Ooh, thanks, Sterling. One of the key criteria that we look at is, do we have content on BrainPOP that ties into the game? And so I guess we would have to learn more about the organization and see if there's a tie-in in that regard. We certainly do partner with nonprofits. So worth exploring.
Sounds good. Michael Lynch asks, what is the revenue share model between BrainPOP and its partners? So talking a little bit about the financials, that how you guys work.
Sure. I figured this question would come up. So this is a tricky one that we are still grappling with, and we do very much recognize that our partners need a monetization system. We haven't found an elegant solution for that yet. And there's actually a great conversation going on about this that is through the Games for Change Google group. So I would encourage us to keep that question going through the conversation. I know David from Electric Fun Stuff just recently posted some really thoughtful comments about it in there. I know there are quite a few organizations and individuals that are really committed to figuring this out. So unfortunately, BrainPOP has not come up with a great solution for that yet, but we do recognize that it's a very real need, and let's keep the conversation going about it. I would love for one of us to figure this out.
Great.
So I guess right now what BrainPOP is able to offer is more about discoverability and support.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Allisyn. So next question from James Collins. James asks, and this is probably a great question for Barb as well. So you can just let me know who wants to answer this one first. What is the greatest challenge you face in getting your games into the hands of the children who need them most? So talking about accessibility and getting these games into more underrepresented or disadvantaged schools and communities.
Well, Barb, you wanna go first?
Yeah. That's, of course, a great question with a multi-layer, faceted, huge answer. So I'll try to bring that down. But, the first challenge, of course, is discoverability, helping them be found. But really, more than that, I think the bigger challenge is helping teachers integrate them. I'm a game developer, right? I love games. I'm fantastic. I think they're fantastic. But I, like so many of us, hate seeing so many games used as drill and practice. I really like to see games to introduce concepts to help that kind of learning. And when I went into my second graders' classroom, everyone's talking with the teacher about learning and reading groups and all the rest. And I go to the computers to see what games they have. And they're on a site that is all drill and kill. It's pop the balloon when you get the question right in Spanish. And I just, oh. And I thought, there are so many games out there who help the kids who are most at risk learn in new ways, in better ways. Games are some of the most innovative ways we have to enable different types of learning. Why are we still having them pop the balloons to answer a question? So I would say the greatest barrier is not only discoverability, but helping teachers and administration and parents really understand the power of games to be the teacher. Just that one little thing.
Great, thanks. And Allisyn, do you want to add to that, or should we move on to the next question?
You can keep going.
Okay, sounds good. So so we have another question about kind of let's see, what is then this one comes from Twitter. So what is the reaction you get from teachers who try game-based learning when you meet them at conferences? What's some of the feedback that you've commonly received? And Allisyn, why don't you take this one?
Sure. I love that question.
Great.
Let's say 3 or 4 years ago, I feel like teachers were very tentative about this. This is okay to do? Really? I'm not sure. Whereas now I feel like teachers are all about it. There's been so much research around it. It's such a hot topic. So I feel like there's a very positive, very strong reaction about teachers who are really diving into this now. I think, from doing lots and lots of picking teachers' brains when we're at conferences or have the opportunity to go into classrooms, the things I think that they're most appreciative of, and this has really helped us evolve what I showed you that we offer in the lesson ideas, are sort of a range of support materials to meet everybody's needs. So some teachers are, often running with this already and really don't need much support at all, and some teachers prefer, a sort of a step-by-step guide. So here's the first thing that I would do when I introduce this game, and then I would start with the whole class and then break up into partnerships or small group work and then come back, and all the things that are happening outside the game. So it's not just the kids focused on the computer screen, but there's a lot of facilitation that teachers are doing. And I think teachers jump right on that and really are able to envision, if they're new to game-based learning, oh, I see, like this is not just going on to autopilot, but this is something I'm heavily involved with, and you know, they're able to see their role clearly in it.
Great.
And certainly, you know, as evidence of this, and I meant to share this earlier, just in terms of you know, all of the games that we feature on GameUp and all of these partners, since GameUp launched in 2011, we've seen over 8 million hours of gameplay, which is like over 900 years of game-based learning. Amazing. Like 250 plus years of game-based learning. So kids are engaged in this. We already know that kids are spending their time doing this. I think teachers are seeing way more receptive to over and we were involved in a research study recently called the A Games research, and we can share that link on Twitter, having to do with teachers using games for formative assessment. And we've been receiving a lot of positive feedback about that and using it as sort of a learning tool. We're involved in that research as well as many of our GameUp partners, and created case studies that are hopefully very useful tools for teachers as well as game developers in getting these games into the classroom. And Barb, you and I did a talk about what game developers might consider when trying to get games into the classroom. That might be something relevant to share as well through Twitter.
Great. Thank you, Allisyn. So next question is about mobile. So is this only web games that you're talking about, or would native iOS and Android games fit in? And how is your team starting to think about mobile?
Yeah, sure. So for us, we don't have a great way to put native games into GameUp, native as in Android or iOS, because we're very, very sensitive about putting purchasing decisions in front of students who have no purchasing power. So we feel pretty strongly about that, and we haven't yet found a way to incorporate native iOS and Android games yet. So right now we're considering this web games, but we're really emphasizing mobile web games as well. But by mobile, I'm talking about the mobile web, HTML5. Thanks for that question.
Great, thank you. So let's see, we've got another question coming in saying, can you say more about the Snap Thought tool, and explain what this tool is, if you would please, and then how would this help a teacher use a game in the classroom? And so Allisyn, you want to take this, and Barb can chime in?
Sure. So let me go back and share my screen with you. Okay, so the way the Snap Thought tool works is if I go into a game that offers the Snap Thought tool and I am logged in as a student, which you can see I am, and I'm going to go into the practice mode of this game. Again, this is right now a very open-ended tool. So the most common way that we see it being used is a teacher will prompt her students to use the tool at certain points in the game. So I might ask my students to capture a moment in the game when you got the correct answer. And so let's see if I can get the correct answer. And I'll use the Snap Thought tool. And I might say, okay, guys, you've got 2 minutes. I want you to just quickly write about how you got that correct answer. How did you know that was the correct answer? And so there's this very intentionally short text area that I can input my answer. I knew to find -7. Like this. So I put in my answer. I could save it. I could go back and edit it later if I want to. I could take up to 5 of these moments throughout a game, and then I could submit this to my teacher, who then gets a notification and has the opportunity to share feedback with the student as well. It's a very quick and light layer of assessment that's easy to integrate into the games, and it creates these artifacts of student learning. So it's a way that we're able to help teachers get a real feel for what did the students do during this game, and what are they able to articulate from that experience.
All right, fantastic. Great, thank you. So next and possibly final question, I'm going to throw to Barb. Barb, do learning games need to adapt in the next 5 to 10 years to stay relevant? And if so, assuming they do need to adapt, where do you and your Learning Games Lab at New Mexico State University look for inspiration? And that question's from James Collins.
James, I love the way you're thinking, and while we're asking hard questions, let's also ask about if education needs to adapt in the next 5 or 10 years, and where would they look for inspiration? Because I think the field of education can look to learning games for inspiration. Of course, learning games is not a new thing. We're wonderfully seeing this resurgence in it, but we've had excellent learning games for 20, 30 years. But what's changing is people are now feeling more comfortable using them. So I think those games need to adapt continually out of that practice. We've had so many games that just encourage practice, and that's one affordance of games, but it's probably the least valuable in the grand scheme of things. So I think all of our games as a field can continue to be about exposing learners to concepts, transforming their behavior, really thinking more about overall change. So I think our games need to adapt to include more collaboration, more reflection, more deep level problem solving, and games are really the perfect tool to do all of that with. Then the second part of that is, how do we as learning games developers need to adapt? And I think we need to work more in concert with each other. This is a great example of a partnership for distribution and dissemination. But of course, teachers are, as no matter how fabulous your one game is, that's still just a small part of the learner's overall experience. So where we can find ways to tie those APIs in together, to bring learners together, to bring teachers together, so that we can really start getting a curriculum of games spread out and integrated in, I think that will help. And so for us, for inspiration, we're looking at tools and communities that already do that. Who is already supporting teachers in professional development? What conferences help them think about the ways you teach math better? If I want to learn about changing math games, I need to learn more about teaching math better, and that's true in any of our content fields.
Great, thanks. So one more question came in while you were talking, and so we can take one more from Michael Lynch. So, and this is a little bit more kind of data research oriented. So how are you tracking who the students and teachers are who are playing these games? Are you able to track some of this data on game enrollment? And Barb, why don't you start out with an answer, and then we can let Allisyn talk a little bit more about GameUp as our final question.
We also err on the side of being extremely conservative in tracking. So we do not have a lot of the tracking data that more commercial companies have, certainly in their apps. So we do a lot of qualitative research on how they're being used, but our analytics, we look at downloads, we look at sessions, we look at visits to a page, and that's it, unless we are in a formal research study where all of our users are consented. And when we've done that, as with our MassNext games, we looked at length of play, failure rate, what caused them to repeat, if they played at home, if they played at school, and we're analyzing a lot of that data. But overall use statistics we don't track.
And for us, I mentioned before, like we're very interested in figuring out how we can present data to teachers in a meaningful way. We've got a few new people that have joined our team that are data specialists, and we're working with a small handful of partners to explore how we can aggregate data in a COPA compliant, FERPA compliant, everything compliant way that respects student privacy. Another thing that we're very, very careful about. So if people are interested in more information about that, I would be happy to share that. I will say it's very, very tricky to do this and keep you know, students anonymous. So there's not a whole lot that you can do that's meets all of those requirements casually. But if you have these amazing specialists on your team like we do, we're excited, and we're actually exploring this with a couple of our GameUp partners. One of them in particular, Fluency Games, is a teacher, former teacher named Marty Esterman, and we learned from doing some experiments in collecting data safely, meeting all these privacy requirements, where he was able to make a change to his game fairly immediately based on the data that we gathered. And he was seeing, okay, students are spending this much time on a game level, and he basically adjusted the amount of time per level based on the data that he was seeing that we were able to help him collect. I'm not explaining this as a great example, but we're happy to share more about that. And actually, we just did a blog post about it. So on BrainPOP Educators, you could read a little bit more about it. It will make more sense than what I just said.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Allisyn, and thank you, Barb. Thank you again for tuning in. Again, it's #G4C Industry, and we hope that you'll join us next time. So stay tuned for announcements from Games for Change on our next Google Hangout. So thank you again, Allisyn and Barb, and everyone have a great weekend. Thanks.